My beloved child, there is someone in your life right now who would walk through fire for you. They would stay up all night when you're sick. They would cancel their own plans just to hear your voice. They would choose you, again and again, in a world full of distractions. And yet, there is one thing. One quiet, unspoken thing. Something they have never been able to fully let go of. Something about the way you look. Not because they don't love you. They do. Deeply. Completely. In ways that words struggle to hold. But love is complicated. And sometimes the people who love us the most are also carrying wounds we never knew about. Wounds that have nothing to do with us, and yet somehow land on us anyway. This is that story. And it might be the most important thing you hear today. Picture this. You're standing in a room. The lights are warm. The air feels safe. And across from you stands this person. The one who checks on you. The one who remembers your favorite things. The one who would defend you without hesitation to anyone in the world. They're looking at you right now. And there's love in their eyes. Real love. The kind that doesn't perform. The kind that shows up quietly, consistently, without applause. But if you look closely, just beneath that love, there's something else. A flicker. A hesitation. Something small but present. Like a shadow at the edge of a beautiful painting. You felt it before, haven't you? Maybe it came in the form of a comment that hit differently than they intended. Maybe it was a look that lasted a second too long. Maybe it was silence when you expected reassurance. Maybe it was advice that sounded like love but felt like correction. And you told yourself it was nothing. You moved on. You smiled. But something inside you filed it away. Quietly. Carefully. The way we all store things we're not ready to examine yet. Here's what no one tells you about being loved by an imperfect person. Their love is real. Their struggle is also real. And both things can exist at the exact same time. There are people in this world who were raised in environments where appearance meant everything. Where how you looked determined how much space you were allowed to take up. Where beauty was currency. Where physical presentation was tied to worth, to belonging, to survival. These people grew up. They became parents, partners, friends, siblings. They learned how to love. They tried hard. They gave generously. But somewhere deep in their nervous system, the old programming never fully left. And so they love you, while also carrying an inherited belief that looks like this, asterisk if the people I love look a certain way, it reflects on whether I did enough. Whether I am enough, asterisk. It was never about you. It was always about a war they've been fighting inside themselves since long before you existed. Think about that for a moment. Really sit with it. The person who couldn't accept that one thing about your appearance, they weren't seeing you clearly. They were seeing themselves. Their old fears. Their old shame. Their old standards that were handed to them by someone else who was also wounded. You were never the problem. You were never something to be fixed. You were always, always enough. And yet, knowing that doesn't always make it hurt less, does it? Because when the person who loves you most still makes you feel like something about you needs to change, the pain is different. It's not the sharp pain of cruelty. It's the slow, quiet ache of almost fully accepted. Almost completely loved. Almost enough. That almost can follow a person for years. It can shape how they walk into a room, how they stand in front of a mirror, how they receive compliments, how they let people close. You may have carried that almost for longer than you realize. And the extraordinary, heartbreaking truth is this: the person who gave you that almost, probably doesn't even know they did it. They were too busy surviving their own story to see clearly how their words and glances and silences were writing themselves into yours. That's not an excuse. But it is an explanation. And explanations, when we're ready for them, can become doorways out of pain. You are standing at that doorway right now. What happens next will ask something of you. Something quiet. Something courageous. Something that has nothing to do with changing a single thing about how you look. It has everything to do with what you choose to believe about yourself, when someone else's love comes with conditions they don't even know they're placing. Part 1 ends here. But the story is only just beginning. There is a moment that changes everything. It doesn't always arrive loudly. It doesn't always come with tears or confrontation or a dramatic turning point. Sometimes it arrives in the most ordinary of moments. You're sitting at a table. You're looking out a window. You're replaying a conversation from years ago that your mind still hasn't released. And something shifts. Something inside you grows quiet enough to finally hear the truth that's been waiting patiently beneath all the noise. That moment might be right now. Because here is what you need to understand about the person we're talking about. The one who loves you and yet struggles with that one thing about your appearance. The one whose acceptance has always felt like it's 95% there, but never quite 100. They are not a villain in your story. They are a person who was handed a broken measuring stick a long time ago, and never realized they were still using it. Let's go somewhere most people never go. Let's go to the beginning of their story. Not yours. Theirs. Long before they knew you existed, this person was also someone's child. Someone's daughter or son. Someone who stood in front of people they loved and waited to be told they were enough. And maybe they were told that. Maybe they weren't. Maybe the message they received was wrapped in love but carried conditions buried so deep inside it that no child could have spotted them. Conditions like, you are beautiful when you are small. You are presentable when you are polished. You are acceptable when you look a certain way in front of other people, Children absorb everything. Not just the words. The pauses between words. The eyes that scan before they embrace. The smiles that arrive after approval rather than simply at the sight of you. This person absorbed all of it. And they grew up believing, somewhere beneath conscious thought, that love and appearance are connected. That care means correction. That noticing what could be different is a form of helping. They genuinely believe that what they are doing, or have done, comes from love. And the most painful part? In their own fractured, imperfect way, it does. Now here is where it gets extraordinary. Here is where the story stops being about them and starts being entirely, completely, and powerfully about you. Because you have been living in the space between their love and their limitation. And that space, no matter how quietly it was created, has had weight. It has had texture. It has pressed itself against the softest parts of who you are. Maybe you looked in the mirror and heard their voice before you heard your own. Maybe you dressed for approval before you dressed for yourself. Maybe you walked into rooms already apologizing for taking up space, already editing yourself before anyone else had the chance to. Maybe you learned to deflect compliments because somewhere inside you, a voice whispered that those compliments couldn't possibly be true. Because if the person who loves you most couldn't fully accept this one thing, how could a stranger? That voice was not born in you. It was placed there. Gently, unknowingly, by someone who was themselves never fully free. You have been carrying someone else's unfinished healing. And you have been carrying it as though it belongs to you. It does not belong to you. There's something that happens when we finally name the weight we've been carrying. Not to assign blame. Not to rewrite the past. But simply to see it clearly, perhaps for the very first time. It gets lighter. Not all at once. Not in a single breath. But the moment you say, even silently, even just to yourself in the quiet of your own mind, this was never about me, something begins to loosen. Something that has been held tightly for a very long time begins, slowly, to open. Think about the specific thing. The thing about your appearance that this person has never fully been able to accept. Maybe it's your weight. Maybe it's your skin. Maybe it's your height, your hair, the shape of something, the size of something, the way you present yourself to the world. Maybe it was commented on directly. Maybe it was implied through silence or comparison or the particular way they looked at you when they thought you weren't watching. Now consider this. That thing they couldn't accept is not a flaw. It is a feature of a living, breathing, irreplaceable human being. It is part of the architecture of a person who has survived every single hard day they have ever faced. It is connected to a body that has carried you through every moment of your life without asking for your gratitude. Every laugh. Every morning. Every time you kept going when you weren't sure you could. Your body has never once asked to be accepted by someone else before it agreed to keep you alive. It simply kept going. For you. Always for you. And yet we live in a world that makes it so easy to forget that. A world full of mirrors and measurements and opinions dressed up as concern. A world where the people who love us sometimes become, without meaning to, the loudest voices in the story we tell about ourselves. The person we're talking about, they may have been that voice for you. And the question that is sitting in the air right now, the one you may have been circling for years without being able to land on it directly, is this. Can someone truly love you while not fully accepting part of you? The answer is yes. And it is one of the most complicated, quietly devastating truths of human relationships. Because love is not the same as wholeness. A person can love you with everything they have, and still be limited by everything they haven't yet healed. Their love is real. Their limitation is also real. And you can honor the love, without accepting the limitation as truth about who you are. That is not a small thing. That is not easy. That is, in fact, one of the most profound acts of self-respect a person can perform. To say, I receive your love. I release your wound. I will not let your unfinished healing become my permanent address. There is a version of you that has already done this. A version that walks into rooms without apology. That stands in front of mirrors with something closer to peace than performance. That receives love without flinching, without automatically checking whether it comes with conditions. That version of you is not far away. That version of you is not a fantasy. That version of you has been here all along, waiting quietly beneath the weight of everything that was placed on you before you were old enough to know you had a choice about whether to carry it. The distance between where you are now and where that version of you lives, is not measured in time. It is not measured in effort or achievement or in finally becoming something different. It is measured in one thing only. Belief. The belief that you were never the problem. That the mirror was always telling you the truth. That the one person who couldn't fully accept you was not a verdict on your worth. They were simply a human being, doing their imperfect best, inside a story that started long before you arrived. You are not a rough draft waiting to be corrected. You are the finished work. You always were. And what comes next, is the part of this story that will ask you to truly, finally, live like you know that. Part 2 ends here. But the most powerful part of this journey is still ahead.